Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope your day is going wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we are going to create an Easter card with some items from the Papertrey Ink's March release. This release is so much fun. I did create a project earlier. If you missed it, I'll link it at the end of my video here. But we're going to be using the Elegant Eggs die set. This has quite a few eggs in here, and then there's also the solid background. So you have the detail piece on front, and then you have some solid eggs also. There are 6 in total, and then there is also a butterfly. And then on this detailed egg, you could actually layer that butterfly. It's the same size on that detailed egg. I thought that was pretty neat. So we're going to be using this. We're also going to be using a new standalone die. This is the Picket fence die, and there is some embossed detail on there. Love that. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using the Just Sentiment Spring Blessing stamp set. Now, I was excited because there's some inside greetings. This is the inside greetings for the Spring Blessings. So you have the Spring Blessings sentiments for the outside of your cards, and then there is some fun sentiments you can stamp on the inside, which I love. So I'm going to be using that as well. The inside and the sentiments. And then there's also a grassy border die we're going to be using for our card today. So all of these are part of the March release. Let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to do some die cutting. We are going to be using the Elegant Eggs die set. I just want to create 3 eggs, and I was going for a playful polka dot mood, so that's what we're going to die cut. I'm going to use some colored cardstock for my eggs. I'm using Berry Sorbet. I'm also using Orange Zest, and then my lightest pink is Sweet Blush. So some nice pinky orangey colored family of colored cardstock. Now I'm going to die cut out my largest polka dot egg, and I'm going to place it on an. Now I'm going to be using this panel. I want to use the edge of it, but I didn't want to waste the cardstock behind it, so I'm actually going to die cut out my egg in this and use both the positive and the negative of this. There's a smaller polka dot egg. I'm going to use that and die cut that out with the Orange Zest and also with the Sweet Blush cardstock. And then for my solid pieces, I want some white polka dots. So I'm going to take some white cardstock and I'm going to die cut out 1 large egg and 2 small eggs. I'm going to run these through my die cutting machine, and then I will be right back. Okay, I ran everything through my die cutting machine. We're going to keep this, and we're going to use this for our background, and then we have 3 eggs. I love these colors, but I do want to do a little bit of ink blending with my Papertrey ink cubes. I'm going to be using my little mini ink cubes, and I have a few colors. Okay, I'm just going to basically highlight my eggs using 3 different colors. So we're going to put the New Leaf and the Hawaiian Shore aside. I'm going to use those for my background, but we'll start off with pure poppy ink, and we'll use that for our largest egg. And then I'm just using my finger dauber, and I'm going to add a little bit of color. This just gives a little bit of dimension to your eggs. And I'm just going to create basically a backward C. And then that one is good to go. Next, we're going to take our Sweet Blush. And I'm going to do a little bit of shading, this time with Berry Sorbet. This is like a corally color. I think it's super pretty. And I'm just doing a little bit of shading on that same side, basically creating like a backward C. I think that looks great. Okay, we're going to go in with our orange, and I'll be using Orange Zest for my Orange Zest cardstock. and intensifying that color on the bottom and creating that C around the right edge. And then our orange egg is all good to go. Now to layer these on our white eggs, it's very easy. We're going to create some white polka dots. I'm just going to use my tape runner, and we'll add some adhesive behind here and layer both of these together. They line up beautifully. We have some pretty polka dots. We're going to do the same thing to our orange zest. And the same thing to our sweet blush. So our eggs are good to go. We're going to set these aside, and now we're going to work on our background. For our background, and we're going to take the Picket fence die, and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I'm actually going to bring my die cutting machine to the camera. I'm going to show you how nicely this embosses. Excuse my messy plates. Now what we're going to do is run this through our die cutting machine. Sorry about the shaky camera. And then we're going to keep our plate over our cardstock. We're just going to flip it over, and then we're going to put this directly on our platform. We're going to add our embossing mat, making sure this doesn't shift. No, it's kind of shifted a little bit. In fact, I'm going to tape it down just so it doesn't shift. And then we'll flip it over, and then I'll add my embossing mat, and then I will add my embossing plate. And then I get to show you how nice this cuts, and also the embossed detail on here. You can see that. So nice. And I want to do a little bit of ink blending on my Picket fence, but not much. I want to basically keep it white, but I do want to add a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to bring back my mat, and to create the shadow, I'm going really light. I'm going to be using my soft stone ink pad. This is a really nice ink pad for no-line watercoloring, but I'm going to use this for a little bit of shading. And I am going to shade my fence basically on the left edge. It's probably very hard to see on camera, but against the cardstock it'll be able to see a little bit better. Okay, fence is good to go. Let me see if we can see the slight color. Probably not. Against white cardstock, I think you will. Let's see. There we go. See how it just stands out versus the white on white? So after we have our fence, then I'm going to flip it over and we're going to add some foam adhesive behind here. Okay, so now we have some foam adhesive behind our Picket fence. For my background, we're going to be using the Aqua Mist cardstock. I trimmed down this panel so it measures 3 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. Now I wanted to create a little cloudy background, so I'm taking the cloud stencil set. There's 2 different stencils in here. One has lots of clouds, and then the other one is kind of sparse. I'm going to use the lots of clouds, and we're going to add some clouds in our background. And to do that, I'm going to be bringing in my Hawaiian Shore mini ink cube. And we're just going to lightly add a little bit of shading. Lovely. I think that looks great. So we have some clouds in our background. Next, what we're going to do is do a little bit more die cutting. I have some white cardstock here. We are going to take our grass border die and die cut out a grass border, but I want to place the stamp my sentiment, so I'm going to put it at a diagonal. And I'll run this through my die cut machine. And then I'm also going to die cut out 2 butterflies. We're going to die cut out the butterfly twice with some white cardstock, and then I'm also going to die cut out the butterfly twice with a piece of vellum. Give it a little extra softness. So we have our butterflies and our vellum butterflies, and I'm going to layer my vellum butterflies to my white butterflies. But before I do that, I'm going to take my black Memento marker, and I'm going to fill in the butterfly body. And then I'm just going to add a couple dots of glue. And then I'll add my vellum butterfly right over the top. I'm going to set this aside to dry before I fluff up the wings. And in the meantime, we're going to do a little bit of shading with our grassy border. For that, we're going to bring in our new leaf. And I'm just, again, using my finger dauber. I'm using my finger dauber because I don't want to go all the way down to the bottom. That's where we're going to stamp our sentiment. And so I think the best way to do this is go from the bottom up. I'll add a little bit more color over here on the end. We're going to end up trimming this off, so shortening it. So I'm not too concerned about this side. Okay, so we have a little grassy border with some green on it. Okay, before we stamp our sentiment, I'm going to take my paper trimmer, and I want to trim this down so it's the same size as my my blue background. So I'm going to cut this at 3 3/4 inches. This way it fits my panel beautifully. I have to trim it later. Next, we're going to go ahead and bring in our stamping positioner. Add a little adhesive behind our grassy border, and then we're going to stamp our sentiment. I'm using, again, the Just Sentiment Spring Blessings, and I want to use the one that says, "Wishing you all the beautiful blessings of spring." I think that's so pretty. I'm going to center this on my grassy area. I think that's going to work great. And then we'll stamp the sentiment. And I'm going to use my black ink pad for that, my true black. We'll just ink this up. We'll stamp this right on the bottom. I think that stamps beautifully. Now we're going to set this aside, and we are going to do our background next. We have our beautiful berry sorbet cardstock. I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending with a stencil this time. I'm using the polka dot stencil set. This is a 2-piece stencil set. There's large and small. And I'm going to use the smaller. And I already have pixie spray behind here. So I'm going to line this up on my background panel, which is a card front panel. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. I'm going to take the pure poppy ink. Ink this up and lightly go over the top. The top, and then also the right side. I'm basically going for a tone on tone look here. Kind of want it kind of subtle. And then we can remove our stencil. Then we have some polka dots. Now I just did it in this because there's a method to my madness. I'm going to take this panel and we're going to flip it over. I'm going to add adhesive behind here. And then this is going to go directly on my card base. My card base is a standard A2 size card base. It's going to be top folding. And we're going to line this up and cover the card front. Now what we're going to do is take our cloudy background. And we're going to go ahead and adhere our fence. We'll just remove the release paper. We're going to go ahead and add our fence to our background panel, and it's the same width. So it's 3 3/4 inches. And I lined it and made sure that bottom edge is lined up on the very bottom. Now what we're going to do is flip this over. We're going to use our tape runner. And then we're going to add this to our card base. And I'm going to add it from our bottom left corner. And then we're just going to make sure it's centered. Like so. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our sentiment and our grassy area. I'm going to use some foam tape and pop this up as well. Now if you guys don't like all this dimension, of course you could skip the foam adhesive and you could just use your tape runner. I'm going to add this to the very bottom of our fancy area. And I only added 1 layer of foam adhesive so I could tuck my egg, my largest egg, behind here. And I'm going to use my tape runner and do a little tucking. Lovely. And then we're going to add our 2 smaller eggs. I am going to add some foam adhesive behind here. I think that looks great. Now we're going to take our little butterflies. We're going to do one more thing to our butterflies. I'm going to be taking some true black cardstock and then using my paper trimmer, I'm going to trim some very thin slivers. And you could do this with scissors, but I think I can get it thinner with my paper trimmer. So we have 2 thin strips. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to fold them in half. Flip over our butterfly here. And then I'm going to add our little antenna that we're making. Then we're going to add a small foam square to secure that true black cardstock. So we have our little antenna, and then do a little trimming. And then we're going to go ahead and add 1, and then we'll do the next one. Flip that around, fold our thin piece of cardstock in half. Add a foam square. I'm going to remove the release paper. I think the vellum adds a little bit of softness, which is really nice. Let's scoot that up there. Okay, after we have our butterflies done, I am going to go back over the vellum now with my Memento, my black marker, and just intensify the butterfly body. Okay, now what we're going to do is add a little bit of sparkle, and I'm going to bring in my unicorn stickles. And I'm going to add some sparkle to our eggs by just going over the white areas. I love the way this looks. It just adds a little bit of sparkle. And then I'm also going to go over the butterfly wings, the vellum, with my glitter drops, because I just think butterfly wings need to be sparkly. And then last but not least, we get to stamp our sentiment on the inside, and I'm going to be using our inside greetings that says, sending you an abundance of spring blessings for a new season of blooming and growing. I just think that's so pretty. I'm going to grab an acrylic block. We're going to go ahead and stamp our greeting on the inside, which is so pretty. And that finishes off my project today, guys. I thank you so much for joining me. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. We will see you soon for another project. Bye-bye.